The road had been empty for hours. No towns, no gas stations, no passing headlights. Only the long, dark ribbon of mountain asphalt stretching between black pines and steep ravines, with Jonah's truck growling through the silence like some stubborn beast that refused to die. He had started hearing things around midnight. Not voices, not exactly. More like sounds hidden under the engine. A faint tapping beneath the floorboards. A soft scrape near the cargo doors. Once, something that sounded almost like a breath close to his ear when the radio had cut out. He told himself it was exhaustion. The rain had stopped an hour earlier, but the world still looked wet and half-drowned. Fog slid low over the road. Water dripped from branches overhead. Every reflective marker flashed in the beams, then vanished again. Then he saw her. At first she looked like part of the mist, a pale shape at the shoulder of the road, too still, too perfectly placed, as if the darkness had been waiting to reveal her. Jonah hit the brakes harder than he meant to. The truck shuddered and hissed to a stop several yards ahead. For a moment he just stared through the side mirror, trying to understand why anyone would be standing alone out here. She did not run toward the truck. She did not wave wildly. She only stood there, one hand hanging at her side, the other slowly lifting as if she had known he would stop. That unsettled him more than panic would have. He cracked the door open and leaned out. Cold air slid into the cab. It smelled of wet soil and pine bark and something else beneath it, something stale, like flowers left too long in a sealed room. The woman stepped closer, not hurried, not afraid. Her clothes looked wrong for the road. Too neat, too old. The coat was dark and rain-heavy, and the blouse beneath it looked like something from another decade. Her face was pale enough to catch what little light the truck offered. Beautiful in a distant way, not warm, not alive with expression, just still. Jonah asked where she was headed. She looked past him first, into the truck, then into the darkness behind the road, as if checking whether something had followed her. Only then did she meet his eyes. A strange unease stirred in him. Not because she looked dangerous, because she looked like someone who had already crossed through danger and left something human behind. Still, she seemed small, alone, vulnerable. And Jonah Mercer had spent too many years on too many roads to leave a woman out here in the mountains with no ride and no shelter. He unlocked the passenger door. The moment she touched the handle, a chill moved through the cab so sharply that Jonah's hands tightened on the wheel. Outside, the fog thickened. Inside, the truck suddenly felt much smaller.
You all right out there?
I need a ride.
This road doesn't lead to much. Where are you trying to go?
Forward.
Forward where?
I'll know it when I see it.
The truck rolled forward again, tires hissing over wet asphalt. Jonah kept his eyes on the road, though every instinct kept pulling them back toward the woman beside him. She had buckled the seatbelt without being asked. That somehow made everything stranger. People he picked up in rough weather usually filled the cab with nervous energy, questions, relief. Shivering hands held out to the heater, the awkward gratitude of strangers thrown together by bad luck. Celine did none of that. She sat with perfect stillness, hands folded in her lap, looking through the windshield as if she were watching something far beyond the road. Jonah turned the heater higher. After a minute, he realized she had not moved closer to the warmth. After 2 minutes, he realized he could not hear her breathing. He adjusted the radio just to fill the silence, but the speakers spat only static. Somewhere between bursts of white noise, a thin warbling signal rose and fell, like voices trying to speak from the bottom of a well. He shut it off. The road narrowed as the truck climbed. Trees drew closer on both sides. Branches arched over the pavement in black tangles that caught and released the headlights. Every few hundred meters, the fog thinned just enough for him to glimpse ravines dropping into darkness. He asked if someone was waiting for her. She said not anymore. He asked if she had family nearby. She looked down at her hands as if the word had reached her from a great distance. Then she said she used to. That answer stayed with him. There was no tremor in her voice, no grief, no anger, no bitterness, just a flat certainty that made the words sound final in a way Jonah did not like. He tried again, gentler this time, asked whether she had been in an accident, asked whether her car had broken down somewhere up the road. She slowly turned her head toward him, not startled, not offended, only curious, as though she were trying to remember how people explained their presence among the living. A shape moved in the side mirror. Jonah looked sharply. Nothing there, just fog rolling across the shoulder. He exhaled and rubbed his thumb against the wheel. Fatigue could do ugly things to the mind. Miles and darkness and too much isolation could make reflections look like faces and drifting branches look like figures in the road. Then Celine spoke again, this time without him asking anything. She told him, "The road keeps what it wants." Jonah laughed once under his breath, trying to shake off the pressure that had settled around his chest. But the cab no longer felt like a truck carrying two strangers through the mountains. It felt like a sealed place, moving through something ancient and patient. Outside, clouds shifted. For the first time all night, pale moonlight pressed faintly against the fog.
You got anyone I should call when we reach a town?
There is no one waiting.
You sound real sure about that.
I am.
Were you stranded out here long?
Longer than I should have been.
What happened to you?
The same thing that happens to anyone the road decides to keep.
Jonah stopped the truck because he needed proof that the night was still real. The engine had started surging without warning. The headlights dimmed and brightened on their own. The temperature inside the cab had dropped so low that his breath showed in front of him, while Celine sat untouched by it all, serene and motionless. He pulled into an abandoned roadside turnout marked by a bent warning sign half swallowed by weeds. The moment the truck stopped, silence crashed in. No engine roar, no tire hiss, no rain, only the forest. And even that did not sound right. There were no insects, no rustle of animals, no ordinary life in the trees. Jonah stepped out with a flashlight and swept the beam over the truck. Wet metal, mud-spattered tires, locked cargo doors. Nothing unusual except for a line of strange moisture across the passenger side, almost like handprints dragged along the body. He swallowed hard and told himself there had to be an explanation. Celine opened the passenger door and stepped down. He had not heard the latch move. Cold spread across the turnout the instant her shoes touched the ground. The clouds overhead shifted apart, slowly, almost deliberately, and a white full moon emerged through the mist. The light touched her face. Jonah felt the change before he fully saw it. Her skin, already pale, lost what little warmth it had. Her hollow gray eyes darkened around the edges, as if bruised shadows were blooming beneath them. Her hair lifted and drifted around her head, though the air near Jonah's face was still. He lowered the flashlight, then raised it again, not trusting himself. Celine was smiling. It was a small smile at first, sad, familiar, almost tender. Then it stretched a little too far. Her lips parted, and Jonah saw darkness in her mouth deeper than the night around them. His body reacted before his mind did. He stumbled backward, boots scraping wet gravel, beam shaking wildly over the ground. The forest answered. Branches cracked all at once in the trees beyond the road, not one direction, all directions. as if unseen things had begun moving the moment the moonlight reached her. Jonah called out to her, but his own voice sounded thin and useless in the open air. Celine did not blink. Her coat stirred around her legs, though the turnout remained deathly still. Then, in a voice gentler than before, she asked whether he had ever wondered how many people disappeared without anyone hearing them scream. Something slammed against the inside of the cargo trailer. Jonah whipped around. A second impact followed. Stronger, metal shuddered. Then another, then many. His stomach dropped. Whatever this was, it had not climbed into the truck with her. It had been waiting for permission. Moonlight widened across the turnout, and Celine Hart began to look less like a stranded woman and more like the memory of one.
Stay by the truck.
I never left it.
What does that mean?
You were kind to stop.
Who are you?
Someone who kept riding long after the journey ended.
What is back there?
The ones who noticed me first.
The trailer doors blew open with a sound like gunfire. Jonah flinched and threw an arm over his face as one door slammed outward and rebounded on its hinges. Crates shifted inside, chains rattled. A wave of black mist poured from the dark interior and spread low over the gravel, swallowing the edges of his boots. He ran, not with a plan, not towards safety, just away. The flashlight beam flew wildly over the turnout, cutting across weeds, rock, broken signs, and the pale strip of road beyond. His lungs burned immediately in the cold. The ground was slick, uneven. Every step felt one slip away from disaster. Behind him, he heard no footsteps. That was worse. He risked a glance over his shoulder. Celine had not chased him. She stood where he had left her, almost peaceful under the full moon, except now her body seemed wrong in its proportions. Her neck angled too far, her arms hung too loose. Shadows stretched under her eyes and mouth like ink in water. Her hair rose and coiled around her as though the night itself were pulling her apart. Then her face changed again. The calm woman vanished. In her place came something raw with grief and hunger and old fury, something torn out of the moment of death and never allowed to finish dying. Jonah's boot hit loose gravel. He crashed hard onto one knee, pain shooting up his leg. The flashlight slipped from his hand and rolled in a circle, throwing dizzying arcs of light across the turnout. Shapes moved within the fog, spilling from the trailer. Human shapes, bent, crawling, dragging themselves forward with broken patience. Jonah scrambled backward, horror punching the breath out of him. The figures were not solid. They formed and dissolved in the mist, pale hands and ruined faces surfacing for seconds before sinking again. Their mouths gaped in silent cries. Accident victims, travelers, people the road had swallowed. Every instinct screamed at him to get back into the truck and drive. But when he turned, he saw the cab windows frosting over from the inside. The truck was no longer escape. It looked occupied by darkness. Celine glided forward then, not walking, not running, simply arriving closer with each flicker of the flashlight. Jonah grabbed a rusted tire iron from the ground near a maintenance barrel. The gesture was ridiculous, human, fragile, but he clung to it anyway because empty hands would mean surrender. Celine's expression flickered. For the first time since the moon had risen, something human returned to her face. Pain, not for herself, for him. The realization struck Jonah in the middle of his fear. She was not only hunting, she was trapped in something larger than rage, something repetitive, something that returned whenever the moon filled and the road remembered her death. The ghostly shapes in the fog dragged themselves nearer, circling him without fully touching. Celine's voice came from everywhere at once now, above him, behind him, inside the tremor of the trailer doors. She told him to leave before she forgot he had been kind. That was all the invitation he needed. Jonah surged up and sprinted toward the road. Behind him, the night finally screamed.
Stay away from me!
I tried.
What do you want?
Not this. Run while I still remember you stopped.
Remember what?
Mercy.
The bridge appeared through the fog like the spine of something dead. Jonah reached it half limping, lungs tearing, heart hammering so hard he could barely see straight. The old wooden service bridge crossed a gorge so deep the river below looked like moving ink. Sections of the guardrail were broken. The planks shuddered beneath his weight. He did not stop until he reached the center. Only then did he turn. The road behind him had disappeared into fog and moonlight. The turnout was hidden. The truck was just a dim shape in the distance. For a terrible second, the world seemed empty again. Then Celine emerged from the mist. Not all at once. First her outline, then her face, then the dark shape of her coat. She stood at the far end of the bridge, suspended between two forms. One was the stranded woman from the roadside, pale and solemn and impossibly alone. The other was the thing the moon had awakened, jaw stretched too wide, eyes hollowed into darkness, body moving with a broken, unnatural drift. Jonah backed away, but the bridge groaned beneath him, warning him there was nowhere left to go. Celine did not rush him. That restraint was more frightening than any attack. She looked at him the way drowning people might look at shore when they already know they cannot reach it. The wind rose through the gorge, carrying a smell of wet timber, cold stone, and something rotten from far below. Then Jonah saw it nailed to one of the posts near the bridge entrance behind her, a weather-faded memorial plaque. Its surface caught the moonlight just enough for him to read a date and a brief line about a fatal crash on the mountain road years earlier. Multiple victims, one unidentified woman. The truth assembled itself in his head with brutal clarity. She had not been trying to get somewhere. She had been trying to go back to the last road, the last truck, the last living driver who made the mistake of letting her in. The ghosts in the fog gathered behind her like a funeral procession of the forgotten. They did not move past her, they waited. Celine stepped onto the bridge. One plank creaked, then another. Her human face trembled as if she were fighting against a current no one else could see. The monstrous shape kept surfacing over it, mouth opening, fingers lengthening, shadows reaching forward. Jonah's gaze dropped to the lantern hanging from a hook by the maintenance box near the center span. Old fuel, real flame. A thought came to him, wild and dangerous and final. Roads end, bridges break. Some things can only be stopped by refusing them passage. He seized the lantern and hurled it against the rotting support ropes and oil-blackened timber lining the side braces. Fire climbed fast, too fast. The dry inner wood caught beneath the damp outer boards, and sudden orange light ripped through the blue moonlit gloom. Smoke surged upward. Celine screamed, and the sound was not only rage, it was grief without bottom. The bridge shook violently. Jonah staggered back toward the near side, shielding his face from the heat. Flames raced along the old structure, forcing the ghostly procession into retreat. Celine stood in the center, half woman, half nightmare, reaching toward him with a hand that changed shape each time the firelight struck it. For one impossible second, she looked entirely human again, young, lost, terrified. Then the burning planks split beneath her. The bridge collapsed inward with a deafening crack, taking moonlight, smoke, and screaming darkness down into the gorge. Jonah fell hard onto the road embankment as the nearest section gave way behind him. Splinters rained into the abyss. Firelight pulsed from below, then dimmed, then vanished into blackness. The wind died, the fog loosened, and at last the mountain road sounded like an ordinary place again.
You died here.
I never never finished.
How many drivers?
Enough to keep me waking.
I'm sorry.
So was the last one.
Dawn came slowly, not with warmth, not with comfort, only with a thinning of the dark. Jonah sat on the truck step with both hands hanging between his knees, staring at the pale line of morning spreading over the mountains. His clothes were dirty with mud and ash, one knee throbbed. His throat felt scraped raw from cold air and smoke. He had made it back to the turnout before sunrise. The trailer stood open and empty. No black fog, no reaching hands, no signs of movement inside. The truck cab had thawed. The frost on the windows was gone. The engine started on the second try as if nothing unusual had happened, as if the night had only passed through it. He almost believed he had imagined everything. Then he looked at the passenger seat. There, on the worn fabric, lay a silver hairpin tarnished with age, not modern, not something dropped by accident that same night. Something old, something kept. Jonah picked it up carefully, turning it between his fingers. It was cold enough to sting. He did not know whether it had belonged to Celine when she was alive, or whether the road had left it there as proof that memory could still take shape. Either way, he could not bring himself to throw it out. The mountains were quieter in daylight, but not innocent. He could see the burned gap where the bridge had collapsed. Recovery crews would come eventually, reports would be written, measurements taken, causes assigned. None of them would say what truly happened under the full moon. Jonah knew he would keep driving. Men like him always did. Roads became their blood after enough years, but something in him had changed. He would never again pass a lonely figure on an empty road without feeling that first knife of dread beneath compassion. He would never hear radio static without listening for a voice hidden in it. And every time the moon turned full over wet asphalt and black pines, he would remember the look on Celine's face in the final second before the bridge gave way. Not the monster, the woman, the one who had been trapped inside the monster for longer than death should allow. Far down the road, morning light touched the broken mountains. Jonah rose slowly and climbed back into the truck. For a moment he sat without starting the engine. Then, from somewhere deep in the radio, beneath the dead silence, came the faintest whisper of a woman's breath. Not angry, not hungry, only distant, as if whatever remained of her had finally gone somewhere he could never follow. Jonah placed the silver hairpin in the dashboard compartment and drove into the dawn without looking back. But in the passenger window, just once, as the road curved away from the mountains, the reflection beside him seemed to smile.
You can stay gone.
I'll try.